Here's a map of every state I've ever visited. I've traveled a lot of America for both work and leisure, and I can confidently say that I've been to pretty much every big city in the US besides these. And throughout my travels, I've seen some pretty awful places. Most of these places I've seen multiple times, and to be honest, I have no desire to ever see them again. Just a disclaimer, this video is my opinion, and if you live in any of these cities and are offended that your city's on this list, tell me in the comments why it shouldn't be on here. So without further ado, these are the top 10 worst looking cities in America. Number 10, East St. Louis, Illinois. Right across from the Mississippi from St. Louis, which also has bad areas, East St. Louis definitely is a city you would want to avoid. I remember the first time driving through here having no idea what East St. Louis was like. I even tried to find a cheap hotel here for the night because I wanted to save money. That was a horrible, horrible idea. East St. Louis has seen a massive drop of its population since the 70s, and like the rest of the Midwest, has lost a lot of jobs over the decades. Pretty much the only people left here are people who are financially stuck living here. Much of the city is abandoned with trees falling on top of houses and the occasional corner store. There is no redeeming factor being here. Number 9, Belle Glade, Florida. Most of the cities on this list I know were pretty bad before going to them. Belle Glade, however, was not one of those cities. I had never even heard of this place, and I certainly never forgot about it. A little bit of a backstory. I was driving from Fort Myers to West Palm Beach and happened to pass through. After seeing how decayed it looked, I decided to take another look. What I saw looked like a slum out of a Caribbean country. Homes are falling apart, many people you could tell didn't own a car, and it was one of the worst food deserts I've ever seen. For those of y'all who don't know, Belle Glade is right on Lake Okeechobee in the middle of Florida. It's a pretty small town with a staggering 50% of its aged 18 to 24 population having been convicted of a felony. Apparently in the 80s, Belle Glade had the highest rate of HIV infections per capita in the US. Most of Belle Glade's residents are poor immigrants from Haiti who grow sugarcane, which explains the high poverty rate. While most of Florida doesn't look this bad, this is definitely one place that needs some kind of revitalization. Number 8, New Orleans. I've been to New Orleans tons of times. Crazy Halloween weekends, Mardi Gras, and countless drunken nights wandering Bourbon Street. But I have to be honest here. Most of New Orleans looks like crap. Even the tourist areas look bad. Bourbon Street is covered in horse dung, vomit, piss, and broken beer bottles, not to mention the countless homeless people straddling Canal Street. The most recent time I went, I had a homeless guy approach me, aggressively asking for money. But besides that, let's talk about the neighborhoods. I understand New Orleans has been through a lot since 2005, but even before that, many of the hoods were in decay. Areas like Dale and Warfield and MLK Boulevard are just some of the many areas of New Orleans that look third world. In my opinion, I don't think there's any revitalizing New Orleans. In fact, from what I've read, things are only getting worse. Good luck, New Orleans. I had some great memories here. Number 7, Baltimore, Maryland. I've been to Baltimore more times than I can count. Driving from New York to DC on I-95, Baltimore is one of those cities everyone expects to be on this list, and many people know what the hoods look like, but you really have to see it to believe it. It truly looks bad here. Now, there are some decent areas of Baltimore, and the downtown isn't that bad. It even has a decent medical center. But what I'm mostly referring to is West Baltimore, but there are pockets that look like this east of downtown too. I've done many deliveries all over Baltimore day and night, and to be fair, everyone leaves you alone, but it's just sad to look at once a vibrant neighborhood that over the past half-century has decayed into a post-apocalyptic shell of its former self. Number 6, Cleveland, Ohio. The Mistake by the Lake. Now, I'm referring to East Cleveland when I say Cleveland, and to be fair to Cleveland, it's not all bad here. For one, the downtown is walkable and pretty nice surprisingly, and the lakefront skyline is nice to look at, but some of the neighborhoods, though, are a different story. They look absolutely horrific, especially in the very snowy winter where the snow covers all the abandoned homes. It's really depressing to look at. Like pretty much all the other cities on this list, Cleveland used to be nice, but because of the jobs being shipped out, the city crumbled. What you'll see on an average day in East Cleveland are falling apart houses, stray animals, and empty patches of greenery where homes used to exist. It's pretty sad to look at. Number 5, Chicago, Illinois. I'm conflicted about Chicago. On one hand, it's one of the most beautiful cities I've ever seen, with an awesome skyline and great architecture. On the other hand, parts of the south and west sides look like a war zone, and I mean a war zone. Mostly Austin for the west side, and Inglewood and Auburn Gresham for the south side. Not all of the south side is bad. I've been to Hyde Park. and that area looks pretty nice. It's mostly certain zip codes that look the worst. Of course, it's the usual broken down homes, abandoned plots of land, and many housing projects. In Chicago, there used to be a small number of housing projects that were over 20 stories high, like the notorious Robert Taylor projects. But now, many people live in projects all over the place. It seemed like in recent years, the O-Block projects have had a bunch of suburban kids pop up to take pictures there like it's the Eiffel Tower, which doesn't make sense to me. These are people's homes, not a tourist attraction. Anyways. Number 4, Gary, Indiana. Just down the road on Interstate 90, you'll get to Gary, a city known for two things: being one of the worst cities ever, and being the home of the Jacksons. When I say Gary is bad, I truly mean it. There isn't anything nice I can positively say about Gary. High poverty, falling apart houses, and a very eerie feeling to it. Even the main street that cuts the city in two looks awful. I've been to Gary twice, and I have no desire to ever see it again. Now, to be fair, there is one area of Gary that looks nice, the area by the beach. Not bad, and the homes are cheap too, if you don't mind your address saying Gary on it. Number 3, Philadelphia. Out of all the cities on this list, this city is the most embarrassing on the list. There is no excuse why some of this city looks like World War Z. The population is not declining, there is a solid economy here, and there are high-paying jobs as well. It is simply the people that run this city who let it look like trash. The area near Kensington Avenue is the most disgusting section of any city I've seen in North America, and it's not even close. And I've been to some really messed up parts of Mexico. If this section was its own city, it would definitely be number 1. But because there are some nice parts of Philly, I had to drop it to 3. I'll never forget the first time I ever saw Kensington Avenue in person. It made my jaw drop. Open needles everywhere, piss, garbage all mixed in, and over half the people wandering the streets are not even on this planet. And it only gets worse when nighttime arrives. If you ever visit Philly and rent a car, if you want to finish your day in a bad mood, drive to Kensington Avenue. Number 2, Camden, New Jersey. And just across the Delaware River in the great state of New Jersey is Camden, which manages to look nearly as bad as Philly, but with a small town charm to it. Small town because the population has been going down every year since the 70s, and the only people left can't leave. Even downtown Camden looks terrible. Gray city buildings and boarded up restaurants. Many were closed after the lockdowns in New Jersey. There is absolutely no life to the city, and at night it only gets even more sketchy. World War Z all over again. Do yourself a favor and never come to Camden. Now, before I get to the number 1 worst looking city, I'll give you a couple of honorable mentions that didn't make the cut. St. Louis. I already covered East St. Louis, which is terrible in its own regard, but there are parts of St. Louis that look absolutely horrible, not to mention that St. Louis happens to be the most dangerous city in the United States by murder rate. But I think it got dethroned recently by New Orleans, but nonetheless, St. Louis has problems. But at least the downtown is nice. I spent 2 days here, got to see a Cardinals game and the Budweiser brewery. But again, the bad side is pretty bad, but not top 10 in my opinion. Next is Paterson, New Jersey. This densely populated wonderland is a hilly nightmare that is home to absolutely nothing. I was debating on putting either Paterson or Newark on here, but I opted for Paterson just out of personal experience. This was the only city I've ever been to where a street fight spilled in front of my car at a stoplight. If only I got it on video. And last of the honorable mentions is Rochester, New York. Now, while upstate New York is beautiful geographically, the cities are not so beautiful. Buffalo, Syracuse, Niagara Falls, Rochester all look bad. But I chose Rochester because it left a lasting impression on how shit it looked. Population decline has left much of Rochester full of empty plots of land, no surprise. In 50 years, Rochester has lost a third of its population and hasn't gained any of it back. There's not much opportunity here, and millennials and Gen Zs are fleeing this place in droves. Now on to the worst looking city in the United States, and that of course is a no-brainer, Honolulu. Okay, I'm just kidding, it's Detroit. Detroit, no surprise, is the worst looking city I've ever seen. Now there are a couple of positives about Detroit. For one, it has some nice sports arenas. The airport looks okay. Downtown looks decent, but that seems to be the main focus of the city's attention on improving the areas the few tourists might ever see, without fixing the disaster that is the neighborhoods. If you're a Detroit resident, let me know in the comments if that's true or I'm wrong. As far as the neighborhoods are concerned, there is nothing nice to see here. Pretty much every section of Detroit City proper looks horrible. I've been to Detroit multiple times, and what I felt like were the worst areas was no doubt the 7 Mile and Gratiot area of the east side, as well as the Joy Road area of the west side known as the Dark Side. Nicknamed the Dark Side because of the lack of light posts at night, so the entire area is pitch black. What developed city becomes pitch black at night? Apparently Detroit. Even the southwest side of Detroit, known as Mexican Town, looks rough. Many of the abandoned homes have been bulldozed recently, leaving entire blocks with only 1 or 2 homes on them. If you hate neighbors, move to Detroit, I guess. Or Montana. What's interesting about Detroit is if you continue going eastbound in some of its worst neighborhoods, you'll end up in the city of Grosse Pointe, which is an affluent area that is night and day from what the east side looks like. Maybe Detroit will get its act together and fix up the decaying neighborhoods. Or maybe it will get worse. Who knows? Anyways, thanks for watching.